Hello and welcome to the Billion Dollar Broker Podcast. My name is Ross LeCane. I'm bringing my 25 years industry experience together with leading experts around the globe to give you the insights on how to live a better life and grow a profitable mortgage broking business that you are proud of. Welcome to another episode of the Billion Dollar Broker. I'm really excited today. I've got Chris Slater from AFG. He's the head of sales and distribution. And normally I reserve this for brokers, but for you, Chris, I've made a special exemption because every time we chat, you're just such a wealth of information and I take so much from our conversations that I think you're going to add a lot of value to the listeners. I remember when we were in Ireland, right? And you were saying that sometimes brokers dismiss you, oh, what would you know about running a business? And the comment you made to me was, actually, I run a really big business, right? And the number of loans that you settled through your white label product, and you were instrumental in obviously setting that up. There's a lot that we can learn from you about running a business, because the size business that you're running, and it's in the same industry that all of us are working in, is in that mortgage broking industry. So you have so much value to offer. So welcome, Chris.
Cheers, mate. It's great to be here, and thanks for allowing me to catch up. It's actually been a while since we caught up, so I've been looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I see you've been doing is working on yourself and constantly, working on your own personal development. And you've sort of had a bit of a fitness journey, which takes me back to, early days. So talk to me about early days pre-broking, what you're into for those.
Yeah, sure. A bit of background. So I sort of, I did what everyone did. I was born in Mackay, North Queensland. So I did all my schooling there. And I always I wanted to play soccer for Australia, actually. So I finished school. I got offered a contract to play state league in Brisbane. At the same time, I'd been accepted into law for university. So at the time, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I worked out after about 12 months I didn't, but I went and got a journalism degree, kept chasing my footy. I ended up getting a contract to play National League with Brisbane in the National League at the time. But also part of that gig was I got a job as a journalist, really I worked for the Queensland Soccer Federation, did a lot of freelance work. So I did some TV commentary, ran a 32-page magazine for a while on footy. So I was really into that, but I wanted to play for Australia. So I got offered a contract to play for Sydney Olympic in Sydney, and just gave all that away, went to Sydney, and unfortunately didn't crack it, got injured after about 10 weeks in Sydney, and sort of ended up going back to Brisbane on a footy contract. But while I was injured in Sydney, I decided I needed a job. So I basically didn't have a cent to my name. Soccer wasn't paying that well back then, and so I applied for a million jobs. Couldn't get one. I rang mum and dad and said, "Can you chuck some money in my account so I can get home?" And then the very next day, Commonwealth Bank rang me and said, "You got a job if you want it as a teller at Mona Vale branch in the Northern Beaches of Sydney." So I sort of took it. I thought I was sort of brought up, to pay your own way. So I started as a teller there, got a transfer back to Brisbane to play soccer, but the Commonwealth Bank gave me a transfer as well. And I worked there, pretty much worked my way up from a teller right up to, mobile banking and premium banking. And then a mate of mine just happened to, he left CBA. We sort of did lending together, and he set up his own aggregation business, and he asked me to come and join him. So I did that for 3 years. And then AFG gave me a call, and it was 15 years ago. The rest is history. But it was a bit of a weird way to get into it. But I sort of, once I got into the broking industry, I loved it. I was working with, just motivated people. I loved how they put everything on the line. There's no paycheck there at the end of the week. And at the time, the industry was growing, and there was was lots of action and plenty of really talented people. So I sort of just, I guess I always thought one day I'd go back to journalism, but I never did. And here I am, loving it.
Yeah, amazing. It was a bit like myself. I did a physical education degree for about 12 months and thought I'd go into that, but never went back. And I had a bit journey like yourself, starting a teller in a credit union, and still in the industry all these years later, right? So there's something about it, that's for sure. So, I mean, you've done a number of roles. You were just talking through your different roles that you've done in sort of AFG, and no wonder you're such a wealth of knowledge. You've done a bit of everything, right? So whether that's been the general manager of the whole business, or introducing the white label product to AFG, which has now been super successful, and as you mentioned to me, makes up 50% of the revenue. I worked in the different states, flown around. So you've worked in the head office, you've worked here in Sydney, and obviously now you're based in Brisbane in your role as national sales role. So, and one of the things that struck me was that you just love the industry, right? And you've really enjoyed the last 2 years. And I think that comes through in terms of the conversations that we have. What do you love about the industry?
I think ultimately it's serving customers, right, and providing solutions. I think it doesn't matter if you what sort of business you're running, or what sort of product you're selling. I think providing great solutions for customers is something we've always enjoyed, and just so happens that I feel like in finance, the world's your oyster. It's kind of it's the most lucrative industry on the planet. There's plenty of opportunities. The industry's so big, so I just sort of no 2 days are the same. And for the most part, I mean, there's tough parts of everyone's job, and I'm sure I could spend time telling you the tough parts of my job, but the best parts are working with people that, I've got some friends I've been around a while, but they started their businesses, writing $1 million a month, and today they do, $1.5 billion a year. So it's just one of those industries where if you really apply yourself and you love serving customers and you're prepared to learn and push yourself, you can sort of end up wherever you want to end up. I mean, sounds corny, but the 4 blokes I worked for I love their stories, but they started AFG by hocking everything they have, working out of the back of their car. And, today the company's worth whatever, 650 million or whatever the number is. But, a lot of our brokers have the same dream. They started small and they've dreamt big, and they've got it done. So they're the sorts of things that get me out of bed every morning.
Love it. Love it. And I recently attended a presentation that you did for your innovators group at AFG. And, I found it fascinating because you really summarized the different models. And, with your wealth of experience, over the last sort of 15 years with AFG, you've seen a lot of brokers come and go, and you are aware of the different models out there. So I'd love to unpack that in terms of, what are the different models that you see that are working in the business today?
Yeah, okay. I think, well, I mean, part of that presentation was obviously saying to our brokers that the last 2 years is a lot of our brokers have seen a real surge in the amount of customers that they're serving. And so it's almost like the businesses have taken a mind of their own, right? So the traditional model is you start as a one-man band, you're jack of all trades, you do everything. You generate the leads, you serve the customers. As you get busy, you might put on some support staff, but you are the business. And so that model in itself, it's a fantastic business model. My experience is, your overheads in running your business, compared to a lot of other industries, are quite low. It just generates fantastic cash flow if you get it right. And so that model really is a model that a lot of brokers love. That if you talk to them, the 2 biggest challenges they tell me is they can never take a holiday. And the second thing is, if they're employing support staff, those staff turn over, and that's a real stress when you're running a one-man band business and you've got people supporting you that you've got to take time out of doing what you're doing to go and, rehire, retrain and get going. So that one-man band model has been very popular for a long period of time. And then I think I sort of generically come across 2 types of brokers. One, which is I really just want to grow, I want to get bigger, and I want to build a bigger business, and I'm ambitious. And then there's also some brokers I meet that just don't like writing loans anymore. They get to the point where they don't want to write loans anymore, and that's a real problem, because your whole job's writing loans, and if you don't like it, you've got to find a new job, right? So a lot of our brokers will move from wanting to be the loan writer to wanting to manage a business that generates leads and has paid, whether it's paid loan writers or contracted loan writers in their business. So that's the evolution to model number 2, which is sort of trying to move out of loan writing and more move into, managing a broking business. And that's a big step. it's a different skill set, very big set. And there's probably a couple of different ways that brokers go about that. But I think one of the challenges with a lot of brokers I talk to with that model is one, in the first model, the one-man band, you can take a lot of cash out of that business. And, I know a lot of brokers that probably make more money in a one-man band business than, probably 20 or 30 of the top CEOs in the country, because it's a great cash flow business. But I watch them, they take the cash out of the business and they invest it and they set their family up for life. And they work incredibly hard. They do long hours. But I think in that second model, when you decide you want to evolve and you want to run a business, well, I think the key there is you've actually got to invest money back in the business. You've got to take some risks, jump off the cliff, is the term I used to describe it. But you've actually got to go, you know what, instead of taking all the money out, I'm going to have to put it back in. But it's risky because if you haven't hired people before, if you haven't, had to worry about, the rules of employing people and the tax that goes with it, and you haven't maybe had to fire someone before, you've never had to really, work really hard on culture and the team culture and all that sort of stuff because it's just being used. So I think there are some challenges in going into that model. And that's probably the second model, whether you're doing loan contractors or you're doing PAYG. I mean, my personal opinion is we're seeing the PAYG model really escalate and grow as probably the most populous model in the last probably 2 to 4 years. So that they're the two basic models. And then we're just seeing this, we're seeing some really big businesses get going now, and they're starting to acquire other businesses, take stakes in other businesses and really get some scale. So I sort of kind of look at it as 3 different types of models. It sounds pretty simplistic, but that's probably what I've seen over the journey.
Yeah, and I think you're saying the tag is option 1 as the one-man band, but that one-man band can include support staff, as you mentioned. So whether that be VAs, and we're seeing a rise in a lot more people outsourcing their staff to overseas, so or in-house, parabrokers or credit analysts. So I love the point that you made around they're unable to take a holiday is a negative. Yeah. And the other point is a lot of people don't think about the future, right? So they rely on getting or hiring, say, an in-house person that comes with experience. And if we see in terms of what's happened, with staffing over the last, couple of years, good staff are in high demand. And there's a lot of people willing to pay and pay well for well-qualified support staff. So you get the point where that person leaves, and let's say, for example, they've only got 1 support staff, then who does it, right?
Yeah.
Who actually processes the loans? And
it's the worst call you can get from a broker that says my offsider that's been with me for 5 years has just left, and they're devastated. And you feel for them because they've built they're happy. They've built a great business. They're keeping their customers happy. Everything's going well. And that linchpin that sits behind them, whether it's 1 person or 5 people, them leaving is a really big hit. So, being able to go on that journey and even to go through that for the very first time. I still remember when I was hiring staff, a young bloke worked for me. I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but he works for Citibank now, Chris Christopoulos, lovely bloke. I hired him. He came in, did an awesome job. And I just got really upset when he left. I actually had to apologize to him. I had to call him a couple of weeks later and say, mate, it's a real backhanded compliment. I was so upset you left. I got a little bit angry, but I just didn't want to lose him. Yeah. But until you go through that and deal with that and understand that's part of the job, the first time it happens, it can be really confronting. So, there's parts of this journey. I just think you have to walk them and you have to live them. And so, a lot of what Innovators is about is just brokers sharing some of that. So you realize as a business owner, oh, well, Chris went through that too, and he's still going through that. And that, I say this all the time, and you heard me say it that day, but HR is the hardest part of it's the hardest part of my job. It has been for a decade and will be for the next decade. It's just, you never conquer it, but it's something that it's a skill set that you can learn. And you got to find, I heard someone say the other day, one of our brokers said, culture eats strategy for breakfast every day of the week. But to build that culture in your team where, you're the person responsible for hiring them and creating the culture, that's a really if you just were running a one-man band broker business, you don't even have to have that skill set. But if you've now got 5 support staff and you've got 2 staff overseas and you're starting to generate some serious revenue, well, all of a sudden there's a whole lot of other skill sets that you need to embrace and learn. And I think that's, what I've seen the best brokers do is break through that and accept they have to take responsibility for that and really master those skill sets to be able to get where they need to go.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's nothing like failing forward. And it was something that we embraced in our business. And, what you see the learnings when this happens to a broker is they start to think more like business people, right? Because they go, oh, I lost a staff member that was doing it all. And they basically forget how to do it and don't know how to do it. And the process wasn't documented. So they had they were relying on staff to run their business rather than a cracking process to run their business, right? Yeah. So quite often the process walks out the door with that person. And then they realize, oh crap, I've got to actually develop and train someone and put some rigor behind what I'm doing because I never want this to happen again, right? So this is when they come to me in my program and we work on building those steps within their process so the process can run their business rather than their support staff running their business. And it sounds simple, but it's a mind shift.
I think you need to understand what business you're in as well. We did this. We take our brokers on. Some of our brokers get to come with us on a Harvard Business School course. We get professors to come over and run case studies. And we did a case study a couple of years ago where one of the businesses was a Spanish pizza franchise business, but they asked the owner about his business, and he said, I was never in the pizza business. And they said, well, can you explain a little bit more about that? And he said, well, the business started with me just having one shop. I got a uni student in to ride the bike and deliver the pizzas, and then I moved him into the front office to take some calls. Then I taught him how to make pizzas, and then I taught him how to manage pizza makers. Then I made him a store manager, and then once he learned all that, I sent him out and he set a franchise up. And so his view was his skill set was finding the uni student and bringing them through the process. And at the other end, they popped out and they were a franchisee of his. And it was really interesting because it made you think, if you're running a business where you've got lots of staff, if say you only need 10 staff to run your business, if the 10 staff never leave, well, then the world's your oyster. You're as happy as you've ever been. But that's not actually what happens. Your 10 staff turn over. If your staff numbers grow to 20, so you're starting to go, wow, I'm actually, even though we're writing loans and I'm generating leads, I'm actually in the business of finding people that want to come in and write that and do that. And it was a big learning for a lot of us when we heard that story to go, you know what, we need to really understand what business we're actually in. And if you need a lot of staff to run your business, well, you're in the business of finding good staff. And, understanding that that's part of the job description can be quite challenging. And I have one other saying that I say to a lot of my brokers is, I played professional sport a bit, but my pet hate is when the coach goes to the press conference after the game and he blames the players. And it's like, well, hang on, mate, you found them, you picked them, you trained them, you put the strategy together, you put them on the pitch, they didn't win, and now you want to blame them. It's sort of like, so there's a journey there for the leader of the business to say, I have to take responsibility, for everything that's going on in the business. And it just so happens that if, you want to grow a really successful broker business with a lot of loan writers and a lot of processing staff and managing a whole lot of things, well, the responsibilities, you're going to have to learn some skill sets that maybe you haven't learned before. So we just sort of try to work with our business owners on that journey to say, we can all share some stories about how we can do some of those things and help each other out. And that's what I love about your program. You're bringing lots of great people together and they're actually helping each other. It's brokers helping brokers, and that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And just to go back on your point around, why people leave, and the pizza shop owner, he creates the runway for them, right? And so why often, staff leave and will leave your business. And I was just chatting to a good friend who runs a big accountancy practice this morning, and he was talking about how he trains up accountants. They leave to the Big Four after 3 or 4 years. And one of the things I was chatting is people leave your business when they run out of future, right? And part of that culture that you talked about is creating that future so they have a runway that they can follow, right? And in a small broking business where we don't have, it's the one-man band, there's not a lot of vision, there's not a lot of scope for the future, right? So unless they're somebody that's quite happy doing an admin role, and we used to call them plotters in our business. If you've got a plotter that's just happy to plod along, they may stay with you for 15 years. But if you've got someone with any ambition, the likelihood that you're going to keep them for a long term, if you don't have that runway, is going to be challenging. So that's why that sort of second model, where you're creating a bit of a business and you're giving people a future, can sometimes work, right? Because you look at us in our mortgage business, the two people that are running our Aussie Parramatta franchise were long-term employees for us. And so the fact that we had a larger business meant that when Scott and I came to the exit strategy, we had people that could move up into that role, right? So I think, when you're looking at the different options, you've also got to look at, well, what do I want to create? What opportunities do I want to create for the people that are coming into the business, similar to the pizza owner?
Yeah. You can also, the other thing you can also understand is, once again, I'm sorry I talk in sporting analogies, but if you're at a football club, you don't get, your career's up, there's a timeline, right? So they just have to accept that they got to keep finding new talent. And I think understanding what your model is, if your model is, you come with me and you stay with me forever and I give you a pathway forever, then you make that model work. If your model is, listen, I know I'm only going to get you for 3 years, then as a business owner, you're going, is it worth your while to do that? And if it's like, you know what, every 3 years I bring in 5 employees and I make 150,000 a year per employee. So over that 3-year period, I make 750 grand off them. They make what they make, I make what I make, and I can keep doing that. You can actually have a business model like that too. But I think it's just really, for me, it's just understanding how the model works and saying, okay, well, if you're not going to stay with me forever, then I need to bring people in who I'm going to get what I want and they get what they want. So there's a win-win, but I still got to be able to replace them. And so I think in my business, people do come and go. That's what they do. We can't, we've got a lot of employees. They've been at AFG longer than me, but we've also got some that come and go. So I have to accept as a leader that my skill set of replacing them is just as important as finding them. So it's like 2 different skill sets: finding them, well, trying to keep them, but also being able to replace them. And as a business owner, I've actually had to learn those 3 skill sets, because I guarantee you, when I left Brisbane as a soccer player and started as a bank teller, I didn't know any of these skills. So to me, they're learnable, but just understanding what your business actually does and how it monetizes for you, I think that's really important. And we've just got so many great brokers that they all run such different models, but they all work. And that's kind of the message, right? Not one size fits all, which is what we love.
Exactly right. I love your analogy around the soccer team and having that feeder team that can step up and play first grade once the turnover of staff happens. And I took it with my broking business, and we were light on in terms of the number of brokers, but we had a number of support staff that would come in that credit analyst role. They'd learn the game, if you like, in the credit analyst role. But if one of the brokers left, we always had someone that could then, rise up to first grade, if you like, and take the broking seat, right? So you constantly, I know some of the best businesses, someone like Ben Kingsley's business has created a bit of an academy where they have the associate brokers and they get trained up and move into that broking role once they've sort of, cut their teeth. And so he's given them a career progression when they join as an associate.
Mate, and Loan Gallery, Mark Guglielmo and the Steve Matsukas at Loan Gallery have got one now, and Darren Little and David Brell and Simon Orwell have got a brilliant one themselves. So, I think they've sort of sat back and said, what's the next generation? Like our industry, AFG is 27 years old. So I don't know exactly when the industry started, but let's say it's 30 years old. We're in the turnover period. You joined when you were 35, and now you're 65. So they're looking in a tight employment market to find ways to bring new talent through and serve their customers. They're good at generating leads, but they're also just thinking about, well, I've got a process, and a lot of them will say they like to bring someone in and have them think, in terms of, just as example, Darren Little, the smart move way. It just makes sense. So I think I think that they're all some of the things you learn along the way, but you're probably ahead of your time with the credit analyst, mate, because a lot of our brokers now, that's a key position for our growing businesses, but sounds like you had it way before anybody else did.
Yeah, I did a bit of research and looked, and there wasn't a lot of people doing what I was doing, but I did a bit of research and saw what they were doing in the States. And so I always had it in my mind in terms of, this is the type I want to be, the broker that sees the client and then hand it off to somebody. So probably was one of the first to sort of really embrace that model, but it's definitely something that a lot of people have embraced now, and
it's still a transactional business, right? So one of the things, I was at a function the other day, and a group of brokers were sitting around talking about some self-employed transactions, and it's not lost on me a lot that mate, some of our brokers are exceptionally talented, and they could just, you're not going to get, I just don't think you're going to get that service walking into a branch. Like some of our brokers can pull apart a really complex self-employed transaction and have happy customers walk out, get everything they want. The bank gets what they want. So that credit skill set and the ability to understand the transaction is still key to any broker business, right? Those skill sets are just really important.
Oh, definitely. I was chatting to some brokers the other day, and I'm saying, out of all the things that you get paid for, the things that you get paid for are the sales and solution. Right? You get paid for the sales and solution. You don't get paid for delivery, right? A lot of brokers get stuck in the actual delivery. Once the decision's been made and the client said yes, they're stuck in the process, right? They don't get paid for that. They get paid for sales and solution. Right? So if you're stuck in the delivery side of the business, which a lot of brokers don't want to let go of for fear and for relationship, but the best brokers understand what they get paid for and what the best use of their time is, and it's around sales, strategy, and solution, right? So if you focus on that, then you're going to leverage the value that you've got, and obviously the value of your business, right? So
I think I reckon we're about to head into a period where brokers are really going to value the ability to find new customers, because new customers is new revenue. And we're having a bit of a debate this morning about real estate, right? But I think the real estate agents that are selling properties, the one thing they do better than everyone else is they find new customers. My real estate agent couldn't sell my house without putting it on realestate.com. So the realestate.com find the buyers, but my agent finds the sellers, and that's what makes them relevant. They go into the community and they find the sellers, the new customers. And so I think, what fundamentally, when you think about that now, that sort of model you just spoke about, your ability to find new customers and provide a solution, but not, as you said, you don't need to get involved in the fulfillment bit. That's so important, isn't it?
Oh, exactly right. And, you can be taken over by technology to a certain degree, right? But what you were talking about, the skills to come up with the strategy and solution for a complex self-employed or a complex investment deal can't be outsourced, right? Those things can't be outsourced. The building the relationship, the coming up with the strategy and plans, and how you're going to create wealth for a client with deeper questions and conversations is not something that a computer system is going to be able to replace you with.
No, right? I think the standards just keep improving. So listening to, we had some of our top brokers at our strategic partners over in Perth last week, but just listening to the standard, the competition is lifting, and what a customer expects today, I probably would have said 5 years ago was a 10 out of a 10, but today it's probably just a 7 out of 10. And to get 10, you've got to go even further. So I think that's what we're seeing, a lot of innovation and creativity coming as our industry matures, and there's a lot of talented young entrepreneurs coming through into our industry, which is actually pretty exciting to see too, mate.
Oh, definitely. And how much value they can add now with the advent of social media and video, and just the different ways that you can communicate your message these days. It's amazing, right? So the level of value that you can provide compared to back in the day is a lot greater. So I'm keen to just go into, so we've gone through the one-man band, we've gone through the sort of the management sort of level in terms of recruiting brokers and providing the culture and the runway. So you can step back. Yes, you may have to invest a bit. I remember Otto Dargan said to me, management pays less than sales, right? And I don't think a lot of brokers get that. They're used to making the money as a one-man band, but they don't realize that, hey, I might have to actually lower my salary expectations if I want to buy my time back and manage a business.
Yeah, I think that's, never a true word was spoke. If you talk to, all our brokers and ask them when they went from being a one-man band to setting up, they'll tell you when they're a one-man band, they'll just, because they're taking all the cash out, they're making more money. Now you've actually got to put the cash in and you got to invest it. So it's a journey, and it's not a 3-year journey. I can tell you that much. The brokers you talk to that did it successfully are sort of saying it's 10 to 15 years to get to the real high end. It's not a quick journey. And so it always begs the question, if you do want to get there, well, you need to start walking.
Yeah. And I think it's a difference, right? So you said there's those two models. One gives you the cash flow with the ability to invest in other things. And part of the beauty about this business, and I know building $1 billion book, is the revenue that you get from the asset that you're building. And I think one of the benefits of this second model that we're talking about is the fact that you've got multiple loan writers gives you leverage, which means your actual asset value increases in value more.
Much better. Yeah, that second model will be, your business will be worth a lot more than the first model for sure. Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing. The one that I'm keen to sort of, tap into and is the big businesses, and AFG, has a numerous sort of big businesses. So give me some of the characteristics that you're seeing and some of the common threads that you're seeing in these bigger businesses that AFG have.
Oh yeah, I think, there's a journey to get there, but I think one of the things we went, there's probably a lot of them don't sweat the small stuff. I think they've worked out, it's a pretty rigorous game, doing lending at times, depending on turnaround times and customer experience and competition. So I think they don't sweat small stuff. They're right across the numbers. So their ability to analyze the business, but analyze the right numbers and be across the key metrics is important. A lot of them will have brought in extra skill sets, Ross. They won't be the smartest person in the room. They will have brought in maybe a general manager to help them run the business. They might have brought in, they might be good at marketing, so they don't need a hand at that, but they mightn't be that good at risk and compliance, so they'll bring someone in to help with that. Or they might be really good at risk and compliance, but they're not good at marketing. So I think they know their strengths and their weaknesses really well.
Yeah.
I think their ability to keep setting themselves goals and to keep going towards the main goal is important. But probably mostly their vision and their culture of their business are probably the two big definers. They've really created a culture that not only attracts customers and delivers happy customers with great results, but they're also bringing in quality people into their team and manage them. So like you mentioned Otto Dargan before, like just a fantastic business operator. I spent a bit of time with Otto. Like you sit down with him, really, really clear on what he wanted to do. I think there's a fair bit of courage there. You just can't leave the C word out. Their ability to jump off a cliff and say, I'm going to go for this, invest the money, and you'll pay it forward, as you call it. To me, you kind of make mistakes and you learn from them. But there's probably a few characteristics in there that they do. And they're pretty resilient. And, they just work hard. They work incredibly hard to get what they want to do. And they're very good at building broader relationships so they've, Smart Move's good example. They've just built some excellent lender relationships, some excellent industry relationships. They've stuck to their strategy all along. They were very clear. I sat down with David Brell probably, I don't know, maybe 2009, 13 years ago, and he was very clear what he wanted to achieve. He was very, I don't know, was strong-minded or confident, but they knew what they wanted to do. They set it out, and along the way they made some mistakes, but they kept going. And they also give back to the industry. That's probably the other thing a lot of those big groups do really well is, Darren Little's probably one of the most generous sharers I know. He certainly hasn't bottled it up.
Yeah, he's coming on my
Is key to
program
head it up.
next month actually, or end of June, right? So he's giving back to the guys in our program.
Yeah,
Guys like
and that's the standard, right?
yeah.
That's the standard. You got to, CEO of Smart Move, very intelligent, has worked a long time in the industry, and just came in and helped deliver the vision. And I think the structures of the businesses are important too. To get to really high levels, normally you have to bring probably some people into some equity positions as well along the journey. But getting that right, and I still reckon our best businessmen owners have great judgment. And we talked about that a little bit when you were at the Innovators, which is you've just got to get 70% of your calls right. Like, you're not, as a leader, you're not paid to make bad decisions. You're paid to make good decisions and the right decisions. So you've got to be making more right decisions than wrong decisions. I think it sounds pretty basic, but it's a standard you have to hold yourself to as a leader, which is, I look at that every day when I get home. I look in the mirror and go, did you make good decisions today? Did you make bad ones? And so there's probably a whole lot of different things go into it, but they're probably the things I've seen the big guys do really, really well. They're pretty savvy.
Yeah.
They know what they need to do, and they make good decisions.
Oh, exactly right. And I think you mentioned a couple of things there, right? So one, vision and culture. They know their numbers. They develop themselves. They're not afraid to invest in I call it who, not how. It's not how am I going to do it? Who do I know that can help me with this? And then looking at really sort of clear at that goals. And again, the decision making, and they're not afraid to make a decision, right? So either wrong or rightly, but if they make it, they commit to it. And as long as they get it right 70% of the time. Love it. So I want to start to wrap it up. Before we wrap it up, obviously you've seen a lot of brokers come and go through the industry over many, many years in the industry. So if you were to sort of define it into some of the key things and key habits that a broker looking to really scale a business would need to do, what are some of those habits that you'd like to see?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I think first of all, you've got to define your why you're doing it. I think that's important. So if you're just scaling because you want to make more money, it's probably not a great reason. If you're scaling because you want to create a great business and you want to help more customers, provide more solutions, you want to help bring some people into your business and contribute financially back to the community, all those things are great. But you need to understand what your why is. You got to know why you're doing it. And by the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with saying you want to make $1 million, but if that's your why, that's great. But I think your customers aren't buying that. Your customers are buying what you're delivering to them. So I think the first thing is to say, understand why you're doing it. And then you probably just have a plan and an understanding of, what you think it's going to take to get there. There's no doubt there's going to be a lot of hard work, but I think my view is you've got to focus on activities that generate revenue. I think, and bring in the skill sets that you don't have. They're probably my like we talk about DPH, which is dollars per hour, and I just think that makes sense, right? A lot of smart businessmen will go, when I'm sitting in front of a client that's got a $2 million deal, within 30 minutes or an hour, I can put that deal together. Well, I want to sit in front of more of those customers. The fact that that deal might take 8 hours to process and put together, well, I can bring in some really good support people that like doing that, and I can spend those 8 hours out finding another 4 of those transactions. So I think just understanding what's going to drive the growth, and having a commitment, as you said, to invest back in. Like you can't burn the candle at both ends, as they say. Like you can't take all the money out of the business and then expect that you're going to be able to make that model work. And that culture, people. My advice would be you're going to have to really back yourself in to find some good people to come with you. It's not easy. There's lots of competition. So I always ask my brokers, why would I want to work for you? Because I think their proposition to their referrers is really good. I think their proposition to their customers is really good. But when you move into that next model, it's, well, what's your proposition to your staff? Why would I want to come and work for you if I could work somewhere else? What do I get? So they're just a few things, mate, off the top of my head.
I think they're a great top 5, right? So I'll summarize, define your why. You gotta have that purpose. Number 2, focus on the activities. I call it the dollar productive activities. You call it DPH, dollars per hour. And bring in people to help in the areas that you're not great at, and invest your money back into the business. And then people, have your own staff value proposition so you can show them what their journey is going to be within your business. So love that. I think it's been a lot of value in terms of, the conversation today. So thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I'd love to get you back sometime and we can pick apart some other topic.
Well, thanks for having us on, Ross, and I hope I wasn't too much of a drag down from the. You said at the start you only normally have brokers on, so you took a risk, obviously, but I hope it wasn't too bad. And my last piece of advice to anyone out there trying to get going is you just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. You got to keep going no matter how hard it gets. And there's plenty of people around that have been through it, and that can help you, and there for support. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's actually some pretty good people around like yourself that'll help brokers if they ask. Yeah,
definitely. And I'm all about giving back, and it's a big reason I do what I do. But I've found, yourself included, when I was starting this business, Slats, I was able to sort of reach out and ask you a question, and you were able to give me feedback. And I found that with the whole industry, right? Don't be afraid for that person who's up the line from where you want to be. Don't be afraid to reach out, because I think, probably 9 times out of 10, they'd be more than willing to do that and to give you their time. So
yeah, there's some good role models, isn't there, out there? Like Murray McLeod, she's just a fantastic role model. She her and Tracy Keary go into schools and help educate children. Jai Hobbs, one of our brokers on the Sunshine Coast, wrote a book about educating families, educating their young children. So there's just some great role models out there for other brokers to look up to and go, these brokers will talk to you. They'll tell you what they're doing. And I think it's just, there's some fantastic brokers in our industry across all aggregators, not just at AFG. I've met some of the most fantastic brokers that aren't with AFG. So it's a pretty good industry to be in. I'm probably a bit biased, but anyway, let's long live the broking industry, mate.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Chris, again. This has been another episode of the $1 Billion Broker podcast. If you'd like to subscribe, we're on all the podcast channels. Also, you can catch us on all the socials. We've got a private page called the $1 Billion Broker, and join our private Facebook page, as well as LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want to work with us privately, I'd love you to reach out, and we'll have a quick chat to see how we can help you start to accelerate your business. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time.